Trump admitted to another crime, another fraud. And what's fascinating to me is I saw the coverage of this last night I saw it yesterday afternoon on CNN. I saw it last night on MSNBC. I heard it, a mention of it this morning on MSNBC and on CNN. You can tell I bounce around a lot. Basically, whenever somebody puts a Republican on, I go to the. But in any case, in every one of these reports, it was like Donald Trump is paying $2 million to settle that his charity was not engaging in charitable purposes. I mean, basically, that's all they say. And I've told you before. I think I'm a big fan of the BBC podcast, the global nightly news podcast. NBC News or BBC Global Podcast, I think is the name of it. And one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of it is, for some reason, a droning voice with a British accent just relaxes me and puts me to sleep. So I fall asleep to the BBC podcast every single night. I literally do. It's become like an anchor for me to sleep. And typically, I make about halfway through the podcast. Typically, it's a 30-minute podcast, and it typically takes me 10, 15 minutes to get to sleep. But last night, this just woke me right up. This is the lead story from last night's BBC Global News podcast. And just listen to how, this literally is, they start with the headlines. And one of the headlines is Donald Trump, admits to a crime. And then they list a couple of other things. And then they say, but we start tonight with the top story. And here it is.
But we begin this podcast in the United States, where President Donald Trump has been ordered to pay $2 million to resolve a lawsuit which alleges that charity money from the Donald J. Trump Foundation was illegally used to fund his election campaign. The lawsuit was filed by the New York State Attorney General's office, and it also implicated President Trump's three eldest children, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. Our correspondent in New York, Neda Tofik, told me more.
Isn't that amazing? They come right out and they say it's a crime. They say that it has to do with with the election and all this kind of stuff. And she recaps it and says, this is particularly given that he's leading into this impeachment inquiry. This is particularly problematic for him.
On impeachment and charges that he abused power and tried to pressure Ukraine to investigate his political rival. So here in this case, you have that he broke New York charity laws in order to further his political ambition. So this looks really bad for the president, particularly at this time.
So, she comes right out and says, this was to further his political ambitions. I have not heard that on any of the news sources in the United States. Are they still treating Trump with kid gloves? She kind of wraps up her little report this way here.
That, but I think certainly when you consider this case, it is very, very separate from the impeachment hearings going on in Washington, D.C. I think what people will look at, though, is what this says about the president and how he operates, and certainly what the Attorney General has said here in New York is that she believes that the president, wanted to get away with this, and she's saying this shows that nobody can get away with breaking the law.
Yeah, and the campaign, specifically the campaign finance laws, that he was using the money from his charity to help his own campaign. And geez, somehow I completely missed that in the American media. So anyhow, it's a total conflicts to date. CREW, Citizens for Ethics in Government, has put together the total conflicts to date by Donald Trump, conflicts of interest. He's had 69 political events held at Trump properties. 13 foreign governments have held events at Trump properties. 393 visits by President Trump to Trump's businesses. 241 of those were to his golf courses. 103 events held by special interest groups in the United States, American lobbying groups at Trump properties. Trump has received, or his family has received, 63 foreign trademarks. 123 foreign officials have visited a Trump business. 109 members of Congress have visited a Trump business. All of these things being conflicts of interest. There's just no other word to describe what's going on here. This is corruption. This is just raw, naked corruption.